Okie dokie. Well, good afternoon, everyone. For those of you that I've not met before, my name's Kirstine Beeston. I'm the marketing director at Beam Suntory. I look after a portfolio of beautiful single malt Scotch whisky brands. I know a few faces here on the call this afternoon, so it's lovely to see such great attendance. Um, my job is to chair and host this session, which is all about the Star Awards. I am the chair for the Star Awards for the next couple of years, so you might be hearing a little bit from me. But yeah, I'm going to chair the session today, and we've got a great couple of hours lined up for you. Today really is about giving you an overview of the awards, how to enter, most importantly, giving you some of the tools and tips to prepare hopefully a gold winning award entry. And to help you do that, you're going to hear from a few different people through the course of the next couple of hours who have bags of experience and have actually bagged themselves a gold award win. So who better than those individuals to give you some insights and tips that you can take away today. It is December, and that means a couple of things. That means we're all getting ready for the festive period, and hopefully you are all starting to think about your Star Awards entry submission before the deadline in February. And we'll talk about some of the detail around that in a short while. But yes, hopefully you are all here today because you are all thinking about entering the Star Awards. Thank you, Kelly. Please put any questions in the chat. I think, Kelly, are you going to try and keep an eye on those just to keep me right and just, yeah, shout if there's anything critical. But yes, please do put any questions or comments in the chat, and we'll try to keep up with those as the session goes on. Yeah, hopefully you're all thinking about entering, which is brilliant. So, you know, why enter? Why are the Star Awards so important? Well, the Star Awards for us at the Marketing Society Scotland are about recognising and celebrating the great work that exists within the Scottish marketing scene and the great talent that exists within the Scottish marketing scene as well. That's you guys basically. So fantastic. I guess I just wanted to share some observations, some reflections from my own personal experience of having entered the Star Awards on a number of occasions over the last 20 or so years, maybe not quite as many years, but certainly the last 10 years. I've been participating in the Star Awards, both as a judge, but certainly in the early stages as an entrant. And actually, there's a few things that entering the Star Awards and taking the time to prepare the paper really does for you. I think firstly, most importantly, what it does is really force you to evaluate the project thoroughly if you haven't done so already, and take the time to reflect on actually the KPIs and the objectives that we set for this project. Did we really fulfill our intention? Did we really fulfill the brief of the work? Did it have the same impact and the extent of the impact that we were expecting? Or actually, are there lessons and learnings in there that we can take forward for next time? So at the most basic level, I think it does such a powerful job in terms of that reflection and evaluation sort of capability. Thereafter, for me, what the creation of the Star Awards paper and the entry does is it really allows you to develop your storytelling skills, because at the heart of a great paper is a great story. And I think that's what we're going to see from the teams that are sharing their case studies today. So it really helps you to develop those the narrative, and that's a narrative that you might want to tell through the Star Awards paper, but it also becomes a narrative that you can talk about internally around the project, around the brand initiative, that actually just equips you to be able to communicate what you're doing on the brand much more clearly. So there's something really powerful there at the heart of the act of putting the awards entry together. For me, the most successful papers that we have written as a team have been papers that have been derived from quite a thorough kind of socialization and consultation process internally, where we have involved different functions, different stakeholders in the creation of the paper, and used it as an opportunity to talk about the work, to share the work, to share thinking, to ask for feedback and input from different stakeholders. And really used it as an opportunity to not only build awareness of what we're doing, but as I say, to use it as an opportunity to secure and gather feedback about the work as it stands. So I guess one of my tips for you would be, don't ever think that you know, the awards submission itself, the creation of the awards paper itself, is about you working away in a bubble without talking to anybody else about what it is you're doing and the power of the work that you're doing. For sure, there's no doubt that if you're going to partner with an agency, the awards paper gives you the ability to strengthen the relationship with the agency and to make sure that you're fully aligned in terms of what you're doing, particularly if you're thinking about moving projects forwards together. Sorry, I've got a puppy who's squeaking his toy here in the background. So yeah, so it's a great opportunity to just get on the same page as your agencies and collaborate together to create something really powerful that you can both feel really, really proud about. I think everybody is well aware of the fact that submitting a paper works to elevate the brand within the marketing sector within Scotland, but it also does a job in terms of elevating your business and showcasing what you do in the business that actually is something to be really, really proud of. And that's great for an employer brand perspective as well. So if anybody's got any doubts internally about the power of the time, the value of the time that it takes to put the paper together, then there are definitely some benefits that you can talk to there. So I guess I would just sum up by saying it's a much deeper exercise than just putting the case study together. And I would just encourage you to think really, really carefully about what you're entering, and because it takes time and it takes effort and it takes graft, right? The projects take time and effort and graft, but so does the creation of the awards paper. So think carefully about what you're entering. Don't enter something that you're maybe on the fence about. You're going, oh, I'm not, if you're going to do it, go all in and take the time and do it properly. And that leads me quite nicely on to this year's awards theme, which I hope you're all enjoying, which is the astrological theme, personal favourite of mine, celebrating horoscopes and star signs. I'm a Taurus, in case anyone's wondering. And really what that talks to is the fact that marketing is not a dark art. This is about craft and graft and, the creation of a successful campaign or initiative is about hard work. And it's about, where the hardworking strategy meets a hardworking creative. That is the power of a great campaign or initiative. And that is what we ultimately want to see showcased in the awards paper. So it's definitely not about whether you are fated to win a gold or whether it's your destiny to win a silver. This is about putting some effort in and showcasing all of the effort that goes into your work on a day-to-day basis. So that is all I'm really going to say about my tips and techniques in terms of the awards entry itself. I guess in terms of the flow and the format for today, what I would really love to do now is to hand over to Hugh before we go into the case studies themselves. For those of you that haven't had the opportunity to meet Hugh, I'm really delighted that you're here today, Hugh. Obviously, Hugh is the chair for the Star Awards judging, so he oversees a critical part of the process, and he's going to talk to you about the judging process and how it works, and really what the judges are looking for. And yeah, for those of you that don't know Hugh, he is a global ambassador for the Marketing Society, and he has really helped to shape the awards and the process over however many years, a good few years. And there isn't, I guess there isn't anybody quite like Hugh in terms of his knowledge and expertise in marketing, having had more than 5 decades worth of experience in our industry, starting in brand management roles with Unilever, before moving on to agency side with some great agencies, before setting up his own shop in 1986, which he sold in 2002. Hugh then was chief executive of the Marketing Society from 2003 to 2016. So if there is nobody like you in terms of knowledge and understanding of marketing, and I can't think of anybody better to oversee our judging process. So Hugh, I will shut up and pass to you.
Kirsty, what a marvelous introduction. Thank you so much. That's the most important thing you should probably know is that I'm also a Taurian. So is this a sort of clue to the way you
Kindred spirit.
well, maybe, although it's sometimes said that Taurians shouldn't get together, isn't that right? I mean, if you're trying to find the ideal partner or whatever it is. Anyway, however, I think you'd struggle to find out the star sign of all your judges in advance, because I'm afraid you're not going to be able to know that. Anyway, I was asked to talk briefly about the judging process, how that actually works, then what judges are looking for, and specifically trying to, how you would make your entries stand out. Well, I mean, you probably know already, but I'll repeat for you that the judging process in Scotland is incredibly open. I mean, and anybody who's a member of the Marketing Society can volunteer to take part. Last year, over 130 judges took part. And actually, this is a very interesting difference between England and Scotland, because I was, I attempted down in London to be Graham's boss for many years. I tried to sort of direct him as the Scottish director with very little success. And on the whole, the Scottish Society always went off in its own way. But I have to say, very brilliantly, and became in many ways, the most successful of all the societies, around the world. And I was very particularly pleased that nearly 20 years ago now, Graham and I, started off the awards here in Scotland, and they have, I think, really gone from strength to strength. And so it's lovely to still be a part of them. Now, the judging process, as I've said, is very open. You can apply to be a judge. Down in London, only sort of top marketing directors are, only about, a couple of dozen of them are asked to be judges. Here you can be a judge, and you're going to learn a lot from that process. And actually, of course, it's very entertaining. There's nothing more fun than sitting in a sort of small group of people and putting a thumb up or your thumb down on, other people's work, because it's awfully easy to judge other people's work, and much easier than, of course, producing it for yourself. But as I say, it's an open process. If you become a judge, there's quite a responsibility about it, because it'll take you several hours of your own time to mark the papers properly, score online, and then turn up for a Zoom meeting, probably only for a couple of hours, but to make the final decision. So they're scored online against a set of criteria, which you can easily look up, and then we meet together. Sometimes there's an obvious winner, that the top score will sail through, but sometimes the scores are very different in a group, and we actually have to decide amongst ourselves what's the really best case, the gold winner, the silver, and the bronze, and what's going to be the short list. So that's all pretty straightforward. And if you haven't been a judge before, why not give it a go this year? And if you have been a judge before, well, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing some of you in due course. Each panel is then chaired by somebody. I chair some of them, but obviously can't chair all of them. And overall, I suppose my job as overall chair is to try and bring a little bit of outside lack of bias, shall we say, that I'm not specifically involved with any client or agency in Scotland. Now, moving on to what the judges are looking for, Kirsty has in a way already touched on some of this, but I suppose in an absolutely perfect world, I mean, what as a judge would you really like to see is you look at a case and you go, blimey, gee whiz, I've never seen that before. This is really fantastic. Realistically, that's probably not going to be the case. But what we are always looking for is clarity and simplicity. And it's funny how even within our own world, we're all pretty familiar with quite a lot of marketing jargon. But trying to keep the English simple, trying to keep your communication as plain as possible is always a very good idea. And actually, even though it can seem a little bit like form filling, I would recommend that you look at the criteria in your particular sector, the category you've decided to answer. It gives you how many marks the judges are going to score against each criterion. So why not follow it? So that it is classically, it's ambition and clarity of objectives is 20 points, results is 20 points, and so on. You've got a set of criteria there, so you might as well follow them. On the other hand, don't do it just like you're sort of filling in a form, because obviously within that, the punchier you can make your entry, the better. That's where there's a very high standard visually, I would say, of the way cases are presented these days. You don't have to do it with an agency, and if you're a smaller client, you're thinking of entering for the first time, I mean, you can absolutely do it yourself, but on the other hand, pictures of what you've done do help. And keeping the verbiage not too great is also good. There's a 1,500 word limit, but you're not required to use 1,500 words. If you can do it in less than 1,500 words, that would be great. So keeping it clear, keeping it a good story, keeping it punchy, keeping it visual, and ideally, of course, the objectives you start with at the beginning, where you set out these mighty objectives, do also match up with the results you get to at the end. It's amazing how often case histories don't actually quite, match that. But let's be honest, because there's a degree of hindsight in all of these things. You ought to be able to make your objectives and your results fit somehow. So there you are. That's a pretty basic tip. What actually makes a good case stand out? Well, of course, you do need to start with a good story. And while on the one hand, I know Graham and I'm sure Christine too really wants, to see a lot of entries this year. In the end, if you haven't really got a good story, well, perhaps you shouldn't enter. On the other hand, if you're proud of what you've done, well, then good for you. And, express it as powerfully as you possibly can. I mean, what really makes an entry stand out, of course, is that what you've done. Well, first of all, maybe you can exaggerate this a little bit. You were battling against tremendous odds. That on the one hand, to try to reverse a particular problem, or you were going into a completely new market and you were being very bold. I mean, you can play that up a little bit. But then, frankly, it's awfully nice to see that something you've done is rather different. I mean, we all love a bit of creativity. That you've added something to it. Wow, that's a little bit. It's one reason why the agency John Doe has actually done very well in recent times, because it's added quite a bit of kind of PR pizzazz and creativity to the whole sort of field of marketing, which is I mean, it's fun to read about, and it is stylish, and it's great. So try and be a bit different. Then when it comes to the results, and I'm sure actually some of the people with the talking about their cases will come back to this. It isn't enough to say the results were fantastic. And it's amazing how often you read that in a case history. The results are amazing. Yes, okay, well, give us some numbers. And in particular, try and give us some numbers on sales if you possibly can, if it's a commercial project. And I mean, if you can, I mean, give us some commercial data. I mean, so does this make a lot of money? Now, I know that becomes sensitive and you maybe can't go beyond that, but I can honestly tell you, reading quite a lot of cases, I sometimes cheer when I get to sort of actual sales results, because, oh, blimey, that's what it's really all about. Because in truth, too many case histories actually just bang on about the impact they made. And as we all know, it's all very well to have, N thousand or million, impacts in, whatever media you've chosen. But I mean, impacts or impressions and all the rest of it is not the same as actually having an influence on real consumers. If you're talking about public sector and behavioural cases, and of course Scotland is brilliant at public sector cases, then I want to, if at all possible, can we see some evidence of actual change in behaviour as opposed to just people saying they're going to do something better? I mean, okay, you've got to go with the best data you've got, but you see what I'm driving at. If you can talk about real results, real changes in purchasing behavior, real changes in actual behavior in society, then this is very much better. I think what I would just also say is, I mean, do look at the case histories. I've just been having a bit of a discussion with my colleagues here about how many cases are available. It's in many ways, I'd like to see more cases being put up on the website, but there's still some very good cases there. Again, I would emphasize, particularly if you're a first-time entry, you don't have to be working with an agency. But on the other hand, over the years, I would say go back and wherever you can, find a lease case history, find a union case history. In more recent times, find a John Doe case history. These are, all agencies which have done a consistently very, very high standard of work and present their work very, very well. So follow them if you can. But overall, if you're new, good luck, and you can enter free, and there's a special prize for you. If you're a smaller company or a smaller agency, there's a special prize for you too. So that's good. But overall, there's plenty of categories to go for. We'd love to see your entry, but make it punchy, make it to the point, and do tell us really how good your real results have been. So there you are. That's my message. Back to you, Kirstine.
Thank you, Hugh. That's brilliant. Lots of great tips in there, I think. Just some housekeeping stuff on the judging. So the call for entries is the 12th of February. So that is the date to get your entries in. Late entries will be accepted, but you will be subject to a late entry fee. So do try and get them in on the 12th, and let the team at Lux know if you still want to enter, but it looks like you will be late. So all that information is on the Star Awards website. And I think anything else. Some of the categories are free to enter, just to say, for those of you that aren't aware of that. So again, if you've got a rising star or an inspiring leader within your organisation, they can be nominated for free by emailing the Lux Events team directly. And I think that is possibly all I need to say. Um, so on that basis, I will hand over to Toby Hutchins, who is Head of Strategy at Essence MediaCom. And Toby is going to share a gold award-winning entry from, was it 2023, Toby?
Yeah,
2020, this year?
2023. Yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So I will pass over to you. You've got the floor for the next 15 minutes or so. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kirstine. And thanks so much, everyone, for having me. So I'm just going to try and share my screen. It'll hopefully be flawless. Okay. Can everyone see that okay? I can't see you guys, so if it's a yes.
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. Okay, hang on 1 second. Okay. See that one?
That's it. You're on.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, thanks so much. The first thing I want to say is none of this is my work. So I did write up the award, and hence why I'm presenting today. But big shout out to Kirsty, Ralph, and Anna, and of course our Lumo client, who are integral to this. So I feel like I'm a little bit taking the glory. So today I'm going to take you through Lumo's Gold Award-winning campaign in the tourism, leisure, and culture and sport category. We called it Cure Your Flight Shame, and a fairly grandiose title of how Lumo took 100,000 tons of CO2 out of the leisure industry. So just for a bit of context, in case anyone isn't aware of Lumo, they are an East Coast train provider running from Edinburgh to London, stopping at through a few places on the way, Newcastle, York. They are the UK's first fully electric train service. They run about 4 services a day from Edinburgh to London, and were launched in 2021. And they engaged with Essence MediaCom to do their launch campaign in 2022. So it's kind of soft launch, but they didn't do their first marketing campaign to 2022. And this was the basis for our award. Now they're quite an interesting company in that they have a great sustainability credentials. However, we know that things like price, convenience quite often beat sustainability when it comes to sales. So a lot of consumers will say, "Oh, I want to be sustainable," but actually, if the tickets are more expensive, they're less likely to go for it. So Lumo is also kind of, I don't want to say budget, but a cost-efficient train ticket as well. And we had to sort of take that proposition to market in 2022, and basically we were doing a bit of a category job as well. So Lumo is actually owned by another large train provider, and we didn't want to steal share. So our main aim was to take people off aeroplanes and get them onto trains. So it was a bit of a category job, but obviously we wanted them to take a Lumo train, not an aeroplane. With that in mind, our primary objectives for the campaign were to increase total London to Edinburgh journeys by train by 15% versus pre-pandemic levels. So a bit of a category job there. So this is kind of the commercial side of things that Hugh was talking about. So for a Lumo train to be profitable, it has to be about a 70% occupancy rate. So we wanted to obviously target above that. So target 70% average occupancy rate between Edinburgh and London. And then the sustainability credentials, which really made this campaign interesting and I think award worthy. So we really want to affect a carbon saving equivalent to 50,000 tons of CO2. What was tricky about this audience was that actually they are a national brand, but you're trying to capture a very particular audience. So it's only East Coast trains, so no West Coast. It's one line, and they are people really travelling between Edinburgh and London. So to isolate that audience was tricky, and it was where our sort of real challenge was. So the insight we came up with, not me, the team working on at the time, was that nothing shows the intention to travel Edinburgh to London than the act of traveling itself. So we had a really nice sort of insight, and off the back of that, a strategy came of catch me if you can. So we injected a bit of Hollywood straight into the middle of our awards paper. Why not? So we had we said we were akin to the audience was akin to Leonardo DiCaprio jumping from plane to plane with no time to stop. And the idea, the challenge was to catch this audience sort of when they were traveling, and tell them, not shame them, but say, hey, why are you taking the plane? You should be taking a Lumo train instead. So what this strategy needed, and this was sort of the tricky bit and where our clever idea came from, was a dynamic real-time solution to deliver the message like literally into the customer journey. So remember, we're trying to get people as they're about to take their flight. So that's quite difficult, relatively speaking, and it required data, and it required a bit of dynamism to our media buy, which actually made it really interesting. So what was our solution? So it's quite a tech first solution. So what we did is we engaged with Flight Radar. Flight Radar, as you can see, track every flight, pretty much every flight. I don't think they do some military flights, but pretty much every flight that happens across the world appears on Flight Radar. So they know when an Edinburgh to London flight or a London to Edinburgh flight is taking off. Crucially, they also know as well if it's delayed. So you've got this data, when people might be traveling to the airport. And then what we did was we cross-referenced this with a digital out-of-home buy. So there were 367 digital out-of-home panels that we could access, which were on the commutable route to Edinburgh Airport, and I think there was about 4 different London airports, Stansted, Heathrow, etc. So what we could do is cross-reference the Flight Radar data with the out-of-home buy to dynamically only serve adverts on the digital out-of-home in, I think we did the 2-hour window before an Edinburgh to London flight took off. So specifically targeting people on the way to the airport and more likely to hit the audience who are heading for those London to Edinburgh flights. So it had a quite nice sort of data use, which we thought was a bit different and was the thing we really wanted to pull out in our award. But back to what I was saying at the beginning, we weren't just then hitting them with an environmental message. We wanted to hit them with a reason to believe. And so actually the creative agents came up with this. But for example, pack as much toothpaste as you like, ditch the plane, book a new East Coast train, and with a Lumo messaging. So again, the environmental impact of getting people off planes is there, but really we're actually appealing to that emotive. You don't have to have your fluids in little plastic bags when you go and catch a train. And there was one about leg room and a few other sort of more emotive messaging, and we were really able to deliver this into the user journey, and it did really well. It was sort of a national news story that for the first time ever, more people took trains between Edinburgh and London than they did took planes. So 57% of London to Edinburgh journeys were by train. That was versus 35% pre-pandemic. So that's a rise of 15%. And what was interesting actually is on the West Coast line, there was only a rise of 2%. So, I mean, obviously airports were used less during the pandemic, but comparing lines with line, the East Coast did a lot better. So we attributed that to Lumo. We also had really, really good commercial impact. So the average seat occupancy was 81%. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to get a ticket on a Lumo train, but you do have to book way in advance. They're very popular. So commercially, this really worked. but then the thing that sort of really sort of viscerally stood out was the CO2 saving. So this saved 105 tons of CO2 by converting the people that would have been on planes on trains. And we did a wee calculation of how much it costs in carbon terms to run a plane, how many planes worth of people we got onto Lumo trains thanks to this advertising, made the carbon calculation, and were really able to sort of put that front and center of our award paper. So we had a great sustainable message, a really sort of interesting technological media buy, and actually, as the guys were saying earlier, I think a really great story. So that was sort of the case study, a quick case study, and I've got just 3 thoughts and tips, and actually Hugh has kind of touched on a couple of them, which is quite fortuitous, because I think it's quite a nice build. So I don't know if anyone, this is the Edinburgh bypass, and I tried to get an actual picture of this and couldn't, so I've mocked it up. So apologies for the terrible sort of clip art nature of this. But on these sort of traffic signs they have over the Edinburgh bypass, I once saw one that said 70 is not a target, 70 miles an hour is not a target, which actually made me laugh. I kind of felt like it was like the Scottish Highways Agency were trolling drivers and stuff. But the idea that, you know, just because it's 70 miles an hour doesn't mean you have to go 70 miles an hour. And he was talking about this earlier. The word count for a Star Awards is obviously 1,500 words. I personally aim for 1,000 and use the rest as a contingency. This Lumo one actually ended up as 1,100. But to Hugh's point earlier about keeping it clear, being punchy. I know from being a judge previously, if you're in some of the more competitive award categories, you could be marking anywhere up to 20 papers. 20 papers, 1,500 words, you do the maths. It is a lot to trawl through. And no matter how good your paper is, if a judge opens a paper who's already marked 10 already and thinks, oh, another 1,500 words that I'm going to have to read and pick out the points, can be quite difficult to get your key message in there. A lot of the national awards, campaign awards, Media Week awards, are now actually an 800-word limit. I know for various reasons, Multi-Society wants to keep Star Awards at 1,500 words. But for me personally, I aim for 1,000. I kind of feel if I can't tell the story in 1,000, I'm not telling it right. And then the extra 500 is just there if I really, really need it. So that's one of my first tips. So I asked DALL-E, the AI image generator, to give me a picture of a worker throwing the kitchen sink at his work, and this is what it came up with. But this kind of like, this actually does go into the word count point as well. So my second point is like, don't just throw everything at your award. So our Lumo campaign actually was part of a much bigger campaign. This is a still from the TV advert, which was excellent. So we did have a TV campaign running, we did have digital running, we did have other parts of our campaign, but for the purposes of this award paper, for the purposes of making it clear, making it punchy, and sort of not overwhelming judges with word count, I knew that when I was writing it, that the digital out of home was the award-winning interesting part, and I made that the front, center, and focus of the paper. And I didn't talk about the rest of the campaign at all. Of course, the rest of the campaign would have helped with our actual KPIs and realizing them, but I didn't feel it was necessary in the paper. I feel it clogged it up, and just saying, oh, and we did TV, and we did it's not interesting. And it sort of dilutes the point that you're trying to make. So, you know, when I try and write papers, I really think, what is the award-winning bit of the paper? And I put that front and center, and I stick to that, even though there's loads of other good work that went in. And my third point, sounds good, looks good, feels good too. This is a song by an electronic band called Fisher Spooner. But my point here is, I know again that Hugh was talking about results and having KPIs and really setting them out at the beginning and really answering them at the end and making sure they're just not, you know, our media campaign delivered 1 million views. You know, it's all about, did it add sales and stuff. But I think another thing, if at all possible, if you can do it, is to really pull out something that makes your campaign visceral, hence the sounds good, looks good, feel good. So something, again, as marketers, advertisers, we know the power of emotion. I think that goes for awards papers too. So I think trying to pull out something over and above your KPIs, which really either pulls at the heartstrings or is just a bit sort of, oh, I hadn't thought about it in that sense. again, just sort of elevates your paper slightly and makes it stand out for those judges who are marking probably up to 20 papers. So, you know, with Lumo, again, we were quite lucky because there was this sustainability, this environmental part of the campaign. Like I said, it wasn't actually front and center of the actual campaign. But what we did, and shout out to Jane Stewart, because this was her idea, again, not mine, was actually conceptualize the 105 tons of CO2 into saying it was actually the equivalent of charging almost 13 billion smartphones. So, you know, it's just like a little, you can get your head around it, it sounds impactful, and it's just a bit of an emotive extra edge to your results, over and above saying sales increased by 5%. You know, it's just a bit more interesting. And I appreciate it won't always be possible for all papers, but even if it's a drier, more business focused paper, you might be able to say something, you know, this changed the way we operate campaigns as a business moving forward, or it was transformational in how we do this process. And even that just adds that little visceral human emotive element to even the sort of driest of campaigns. And that's it from me. So
Love that.
thanks.
Thank you, Toby.
No worries. Stop
Great.
sharing.
I love the point, your points there at the end. I think that idea of making it feel real for people is a critical part of successful papers, actually. And I think that's where socializing the act of pulling the information together for the paper can sometimes be quite helpful, because it's not always, sometimes it's difficult to take a step back from that when you're just putting all the content together and sort of worrying about the visual aesthetic and all the rest of it. So I think that's a fantastic tip. And I love the point that your exercise around the word count. Of course we should be working to 1,000 words and not 1,500 words. Feels so obvious. But I think, if I may, an observation on that for me, and it goes back to one of the points that Hugh made as well, was I think if we can steel ourselves from not using marketing jargon and use clear and simple language, then we're going to be much more likely to stay within the word count, because it forces you just to be really clear and concise about the point you're trying to make. So I think you stand a much better chance of being able to hit that word count. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Great. Okay, one down, two to go. I am going to now pass to Claire Matheson, who is Business Director at Republic of Media, who is going to share another case study and some top tips, hopefully, as well. Claire, over to you.
Great, thank you. So hopefully that full screen now. Great, thanks. So yes, today I'm going to speak about our campaign for the Bruich Laddie distillery, and particularly their product, the Classic Laddie, which won Media Gold at the Star Awards last year. It was a campaign that I was lucky enough to work on, as well as to author the paper of. And I think I'll give you a bit of background. So I think we, especially in Scotland, with a booming whisky industry that we're all quite familiar with in marketing, I think can be forgiven for thinking that brands like Bruich Laddie are maybe quite well known, because we know the brands like this in Scotland who are part of the marketing society and we're surrounded by. But Bruich Laddie is actually one of the smaller distilleries on Islay, but it's actually one of the largest, it's the largest employer on Islay. And that's really what's important about them as you feed and fed into their B Corp status. So I think the number of distilleries on Islay went for something in the region at the beginning of the 2000s to about 80 to over 140 now. So it's absolutely growing, and that's because there's a worldwide demand for Scotch whisky and Islay whisky specifically. But obviously there's a lot of very large brands within both Scotch and Islay even itself. So Bruich Laddie are a bit of an underdog. They are trying to do some things slightly differently in that, you know, they've got more storage facilities on the island to be able to age their whiskey and things on the island compared to perhaps some of their competitors. And that is why they've got such high levels of staffing. And what they really believe in is that support for the community. But what that meant was that we actually had a really nice place to start with, because actually who they developed themselves as were a brand that just want to say, this is who we are, and this is why we genuinely do what we do. And that feeds into their community, their purpose, sustainability. So really, when we started working with them, we could tell instantly just how ambitious they were, not just about growing their brand, but about protecting what they're developing for their community, and how important it is to actually portray their values. So it started with that. And they have got a very clearly defined, goals and purpose through their B Corp purpose. And then they came to us because ultimately, amongst everything they're doing, the only way to support that community, to provide those jobs, is to grow that brand and to produce and sell more whiskey. So really, we came together with Bruichladdich Distillery as well as with Thirstcraft to develop their largest ever media campaign, which ran early 2022, about Easter time. And whilst it was their largest ever campaign, it's safe to say that many whiskey brands would still have budgets that were at least 10 times bigger than them. So it was huge for us, but it still kept them as quite small in the pool of whiskey marketing. And so the first place to start, I think, is with showing you the creative that was developed by Thirstcraft.
And now on all four, an advertising exclusive from Bruichladdich.
So when you're given what is a brilliant platform that does stand out within in a category, it definitely makes our job in media a little bit easier. But nonetheless, we knew that for this campaign to be a success, but actually to be that kind of foundation block for their biggest ever campaign, we had to start them on the right point, that they could continue their work and do things the way that they believe they should. So actually a large backbone of our campaign, objectives obviously filtered around brand awareness, being a smaller whiskey brand, but actually one of the really core parts was making sure that everything laddered back to who they are as a progressive brand and the values they stand for. So whilst bearing in mind, we had to make sure that we worked with some large suppliers, we started with Channel 4. One of the reasons for working with Channel 4 is not only their obvious ability to access upmarket audiences, but was actually as they are one of the most sustainably progressive broadcasters in terms of their ad net zero targets and having greenhouse funds and things like that. So with Channel 4, we thought, what can we do? And we didn't just want to put the advert there. We didn't have TV budget, so it was a BVOD exclusive piece. So with Channel 4, we actually developed our own content curation page. So it was a set of content developed and curated by Bruichladdich for people with like-minded interests and goals. So there was a lot of sustainability programming within some of those segments. There was obviously some cooking in there alongside that. And so we were able to direct people to go and explore content that we think reflected our brand well. But not only that, we were able to launch the campaign with that advertising exclusive that you just saw. So on the day of launch, that ran exclusively with Channel 4. We were only the second advertiser in the UK to be able to do that, behind Nintendo, which I'm more than happy to take on not Nintendo budgets. And we really worked in partnership with them to make sure that we just delivered a slightly more thought out media than standard placement. And then we looked at who else we could work with. So for us, it was important to begin working with media suppliers that had B Corp status, but obviously they had to stack up as well. It's worth saying that, it's all fine and well to have a B Corp status, but if you can't deliver quality media and effective results, then that wasn't going to win you a place at the table. So our press partner was with The Guardian, where we delivered a series of articles which just explained a bit more about who Bruichladdich are, why they do things the way that they do, and just to kind of explain their progressive farming, their grain in a bit more detail. And that was really targeting, you know, a Guardian audience that are more progressive, that actually do care about the minutiae detail that not everyone going to the shop picking up a bottle of whiskey is necessarily going to recognize. And then in terms of digital partners, we had two main partners. One was Mobsta, who were able to offset all of our media buys. So whilst they're not B Corp accredited themselves, it meant that we were offsetting the emissions from our campaign. With Goodloop, they are a B Corp accredited charity partner and also raise money for charity through their advertising. So for every advert served, a donation goes to charity, and we were able to plant 20,000 trees through that fundraising activity. And then last but not least, we put up some, I mean, that example is outside the Barrowlands in Glasgow, and is the only billboard we actually had in the campaign. It was predominantly mural-led, but really it was about putting ourselves, rather than necessarily on the highest, glossiest billboards that you can find where you might expect to see more upmarket whiskey brands, we really wanted to be in and around the things that we believed like our passionate progressive communities would be. So whether that's at the Barrowlands for their next gig, or we had a wonderfully tall mural right outside Rough Trade Records in London, just knowing that we were reaching those people who were really passionate about something else, but could mirror that passion into everything that Bruichladdich are doing for their whiskey. And outside of sales results, which I can't share, you know, we focused in on that. We had to focus in on driving awareness of the brand. That was really, really important for us. And I think actually even more so, what was quite nice about this was we didn't really have massive research budgets behind this campaign to be able to, you know, completely prove all of the effectiveness. So actually a lot of our results were generated by getting media research included as part of the media activation. So we had studies from the likes of The Guardian and Channel 4 actually supporting what our media was able to do, so that we could get their support in proving how effective our campaign was outside of our ability to fund that ourselves. And so that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of the campaign. And because really what I wanted to focus on was, I guess I have 9 quite quick things, which some have been touched on and some are different, of how we approach taking what was, we were very fortunate to say, just a really nice campaign to work on with some great work. So we knew that bit was there, but how do you make it award-winning? And we've spoken about it already, but yes, I will wax lyrical about reading case studies. I'm very lucky to work at an agency where I've got internal case studies, but I would still be completely lost without the Star Awards website. I go in and read so many papers every year. Anyone that comes to me and is thinking about their first time entrant, where do I do? What do I do? You go and read case studies. That's all you need to know, is just spend weeks reading those before you even pick up the pen. And then for me, the first thing is get the client involved. So for the 2024 entries, I've already had initial conversations with every single one of my clients that we'll be entering papers with, so that we're all on the same board, so that, you know, in an ideal world, we would all be round the table for the post-campaign analysis that comes from the sales teams, the creative teams, the PR teams, the media teams, and we would all know all of that information straight up. But it's not how things work, you know, like Kantar data for sales isn't ready at the same time as TV delivery data is. Everything comes at a different time. So that's not how it works. But if you get your client involved from the very beginning, you'll be able to sit down together and really figure out what's the hero, what have we really achieved here, and that's the most important thing. And then you can all get up on stage together and be very happy about the work you've produced, fingers crossed. And to go completely against what Julie Andrews originally said, don't start at the beginning. Don't start writing your paper until you have figured out what your results are. Because if you've not got the evidence to say, like I think, you know, Hugh said at the beginning, you can't just say, and everything was excellent. You can have had a really, really, really nice campaign, and you can intuitively believe that campaign must have done something, but you have to have genuine results that ladder back to genuine objectives. So you need to sit and look at your research and understand what you need, but also that actually, if you've measured 10 different things you don't have to talk about every single one of them. If your goal was to increase your association with sustainability, but something over there didn't go quite that well, you don't have to talk about it. Focus it in and figure out where you had your wins. And then set your goals. Then start your paper, write your objectives. And just because it's Christmas, almost Christmas, I couldn't avoid putting elf in. So yeah, make sure that you're writing smart objectives. You know, it's all fine and well, and it may sometimes be necessary to say our goal was to increase awareness, but actually you need to be saying our goal was to increase awareness by 5 points from X to Y. You can't just be saying, we wanted to do this thing, and then we did this thing. We need numbers. We really do, to prove that it worked. And then, yeah, that's when it's important that your beginning and your end of story tie back together. You've set your beginning up from your results, knowing that you can do it, and then be excited at the end, being like, yeah, we hit that objective, and then we hit that objective, and then we hit that objective, and build it up. And I think you can start with everything from your press coverage to your social media coverage, building up to really what was that real thing you were trying to do that everyone's going to be like, they smashed it out the park. You want to leave the judges on a high at the end, to be like, that was great. I didn't expect that good a result at the end. And then kind of focusing on the middle of the paper, don't put all your good ideas up front. And if I'm being completely honest, this is the one that took me a while to learn, because you get really excited when you're writing your papers and you're like, we did this amazing thing. And I will always naturally want to be like, we had this huge partnership with The Guardian and this massive partnership with Channel 4, and they were all absolutely amazing. And then we did this stuff underneath below. Actually, particularly for a media paper where you may need to focus on more of your media rather than maybe that one hook, as Toby spoke about, actually keep bringing them back. Every time they think they've heard your best idea, surprise them with another one, so that they're constantly being more and more impressed as they read the paper, and most importantly, not getting bored of what they're seeing. Yeah, Toby mentioned it. Stick to the criteria, stick to the word count. The criteria is certainly your friend. It's how I dictate my word count breakdown, is based on where the scoring lies within that criteria. But also just be careful about your writing. Like, writing an awards paper is hard, and you know, you never need to say it was very good. You can say it was excellent in one word. Like, an adverb's not going to be your friend, and an adjective's not going to be your friend necessarily there. So try and keep it quick and to the point, so that you're not exhausting the reader, and actually you'll make it a much more powerful piece of writing in the first place anyway. And then, especially if you are new to awards entries, but even if you've done it a bit and you need to do it again, you can't type quite as quickly as Bruce Almighty, but I wrote this paper, said, that's good, that could maybe achieve a bronze. I put it away, I didn't look at it again, I started it entirely from scratch, and I knew that paper was 10 times better the second time that I wrote it. So unless you are profound at winning golds and able to do it that quickly, write your first draft and then start it again, because you will write it better the second time. And finally, there are 40 working days if we exclude the Christmas holidays till the entries deadline. So you definitely have to start writing them now, because they always take longer than you think, even when you've written them year after year. And that is me. Thank you.
Sage advice. Thank you, Claire. We are not trying to scare anybody in this session. But you're absolutely right. We should be starting the prep now, I think. Yeah, brilliant tips. And I think that the paper that you shared is such a brilliant example of the strength of the creative and the strength of the media strategy just working so beautifully together. So can absolutely see why it won gold. And I guess just one other thing I wanted to draw out that you mentioned. So think about your role as a judge and getting involved in judging as a mechanic to see what everyone else is up to, right? To see what the standard is, to see what the level is, and to kind of see what you're up against. So that's maybe a reason to invest a little bit of time in the judging process and on an ongoing basis, certainly. But thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to hand over to Laura now for the last case study of the session. Laura Jones is Account Director at Multiply, and Laura is going to talk us through the last Gold Award winning paper for today. Over to you, Laura.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And it's been amazing to hear all of the great case studies and tips as well. Hopefully I'm not going to repeat too many of them. And hopefully you can all see my screen now. Yeah, I'm seeing a nod. Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through a bit of a different campaign here. You might be wondering why there's a giant donkey on your screens. I'm going to give you an overview of this campaign. So this was a Listerine campaign which won gold in the retail and hospitality category at last year's Star Awards. I'll show you the actual entry paper itself and pass on a few words of wisdom, which have really helped me and my team over the past few years. So we'll get some tips as we go along. Before I get going, just a very, very quick intro. So Multiply are a creative agency. We have brand, shopper, and digital as our key sort of pillars, all under one roof here. And we've just celebrated our 20th birthday. So happy birthday to us. And my role is really to lead our key brand and shopper clients. And one of those is Kenvue. So that is the newly established Johnson & Johnson consumer brand arm. So they have the likes of Calpol, Aveeno, and Listerine. And that is me with our lovely donkey pal and a couple of our team members holding the award on the bottom left. So you can see how much it really means to agencies and brands throughout the industry to win. So to give a brief overview of the campaign as a whole, our protagonist is the donkey. I will explain why he is there in due course, but essentially mouthwash as a category had a bit of damage control to do. It was very quickly dropping off the main shopping list. I don't know about you, but there's definitely a bottle of mouthwash sitting dusty at the back of my cupboard, which you have all the good intention of using, but doesn't quite get into that oral care routine very well. So what we did was create a brand experience exclusive to Tesco to really remind everyone of the benefits of Listerine with this very special guest appearance and some wonderful AR technology behind it to give that job of education, but also engagement as well. And there was a fantastic result at the end of it. I'm going to apologize in advance for all of the donkey puns. And I'm going to start off with a few tips even before we get into this. One of the things that, especially if you're new to writing award papers, is actually getting started. It's the worst bit. So just start as early as possible. As Claire said, just write anything now. Once you come off this call, if you've got an hour or so, just write anything, make a draft, however basic or long form you want to be. Definitely, this side of Christmas, aim for even just a side of A4 in bullet points. Get those results down and get that journey and that story started. Just to check that you've got the basics of marketing science there and a genuine winning case. If you're anything like our organization, you have to prove to certain people that this is an award-winning entry and this is worth entering. So make that clear case, and then you can edit, and polish from there. The second point is really collaborate. That's come up as a big point throughout this whole session. I'm an Aquarius, so I'm an air sign, and my red flag is that I'm fiercely independent, but nobody should be an island in this situation. Think of yourself as the middle person in all of this. You need to try and grab all of that information possible, whether it's from internally throughout the agency, the planner, the creative team, the production manager, but also from your client and wider than that. Are there any anecdotal pieces of info that haven't been recorded already? Try and grab that as much as you can. And a lot of people have to write award entries when they've never worked on the brand or campaign. Speaking from personal experience, luckily I was involved in this one, so I had somewhere to start, but just lean on others to try and bring all that information together into a central place. Then number 3 there is choose your category wisely. So we also entered this into brand experience as well. Obviously, that's a heavy focus of it. But try and think about where there are similarities with categories, or if yours just slots into one, enter one. This one retail, but yeah, we also entered it into brand experience as well. And tailor your writing to the category. Read that fine print. Don't just block enter one paper into everything. In this paper, I focused, as you'll come to see, a bit more on that retail strategy rather than the experience itself. So make sure you read that fine print, and that'll make all the difference. And then this was also mentioned by Claire and Hugh as well, but just read as many entry papers as you can, especially the award-winning ones, but also read some of the not award-winning ones, so you can really start to build your understanding, your critical thinking, your evaluation skills, and you'll start to notice what a winning campaign looks and sounds like. And then the last point here I've got is give it that real kick. Storytelling is a big theme of the afternoon. Just think of that story you want to create. Make sure it's compelling, convincing. Think of the core word I like to use is jeopardy. What's that jeopardy that you had to face that you've overcome? What makes it that good news story? What were you battling in the beginning? Judges really want to be taken on that roller coaster ride through your journey, but just make sure that you do keep it authentic. Judges can really see through that embellishment or vagaries that quite often get popped in there. So if we are going back to the campaign, so we've started off with the ambition and clarity of objectives. So the problem here was really a category-wide one that we had to battle. This was our jeopardy in the beginning. So the effect of COVID-19 and then going into a cost of living crisis, the oral care routine seems a simple one. You have your toothbrush, your toothpaste. You should have your floss, and you should have a mouthwash as well. But many people it drops off the list. It was not looking good in terms of that category piece. So there was some damage control to do. And really drive that penetration into the mouthwash category, drive trade up, and really increase that conversion. As some of the speakers have already alluded to, you can talk and talk and talk about everything that went into your campaign. This was very specific to the brand experience piece, so we've not mentioned the competition really that was involved, the above the line. It's very focused on that brand experience piece, and why that gave a clear reason to buy and why that impacted people right at the point of purchase. Going into our strategy section, so I won't go through this in a huge amount of detail, but there is really that lack of awareness about how effective mouthwash can be when it is added to your oral care routine. The fact is that we all do have some sort of visible plaque. This is pretty disgusting, but it is true. And not as many people go to the dentist as regularly. But Listerine has an amazing amount of benefits. They have some absolutely fantastic brand claims that it's 99% more effective than floss at clearing away that plaque and creating that really fantastic oral care. So that was the cornerstone of where we started in that education piece. Now, one of my other tips was get somebody who is not familiar with the campaign to read your draft, read a draft of your paper, because the one thing that somebody said to me who had no involvement in the campaign at all was, why is there a donkey in this? Why? You've not explained that. Please, can you give some sort of background into why he is in there? So this was a point that we took, and we actually popped in. So why is this actually happening? Why is he there? So, and I think the answer to that is that mouthwash is not the sexiest of categories. It can turn very scientific, very boring, very quickly. So we wanted to, I suppose, create this playful character who would have a bit more brand sentiment and brand recall about him, and make that more emotional connection with people with a bit of a humorous ambassador, much like the Andrex puppy or the meerkat from Compare the Market. Yeah, we wanted him to be really memorable. So a donkey performed really well in testing, and he's got the sentiment and the recall with the brand is absolutely amazing with brand tracking. And I don't know if anybody has seen the Above the Line, but he is Scottish. We don't really know why he's Scottish. It's nothing to do with Shrek, but it's that Scottish humour which we can take a real compliment from. And then we talk through here just a bit about the target shopper and what shopper journey they're specifically on when they're buying mouthwash. So I won't go through this in detail, but just to show you how the entry paper has been laid out and how important that is, and just adding that bit of colour as to who that shopper and that person is. So a lot of people just have no idea what product is right for them, and why should I even add this as an extra step? I don't need it, when actually you could really benefit from it. As well, because this was a retail-focused paper, we very much aligned to the Tesco strategy. So as I said before, this was an exclusive bespoke approach for Tesco. So we very much aligned to their specific shopper personality types, which is the Wix archetype, very family-focused, very family-driven. So whatever we were going to create needed to appeal to them, needs to bring out the fun of the brand and those distinctive brand assets. And what we did align to Tesco's health, value driving, and experience strategic pillars. So what they really wanted to create in 2023 was more innovation and create more experiences for shoppers. So right in the middle of entry writing, you may start to think, oh my goodness, what have I done? So this is just take a moment to step back. You're deep into the process, but keep trotting along. You will get there. And I think one of the main tips I have here is what I've mentioned before, really have a good person on your team or someone completely fresh to the campaign to read over your drafts. They will notice when a narrative isn't making sense. If there's a certain gap, like why have you got a big donkey in here? Or just glaring errors. So that's a really good point to take into account. And don't be an ass. These judges have so many papers to read. Make it easy for them. Make it easy for them to tick against everything that they've got to judge against. They are humans too, at the end of the day, and they'll just be reading so many. So don't create too much dense, long copy text, break up with imagery or diagrams, just keep it really tight. And then if your campaign does allow, just match the personality. One of my managers earlier in my career, you know, awards may seem quite big and scary, but we are in the creative business, so don't be afraid to be funny or creative with it. Really take that theme and entertain as well as inform. And not everybody has a donkey to make that a little bit easier, but take what is really special about your entry or what's unique about it and play on that. And that would be my advice there. So what did we do? What was this actual experience? We wanted to create a front of store experience that would really engage with shoppers as they came in that front door. But quite a lot of the time with these things, you want to experience the product for yourself. You can't really sample mouthwash in the front of a grocery store. It's not really, you can't have a big sink there. That's just not going to work. So how could we create this experience without people being able to actually sample the product? How can we get people to feel more connected to this fake animated donkey? That's quite difficult. And how can we educate on the benefits of mouthwash without making it really boring? So we created an AR machine, which had the ability to roadshow around the UK, visit all sorts of Tesco stores, and people could actually meet Donkey himself via this AR experience, enter a competition, and shop a merchandise space all at the same time. So how did this work? People just very simply touch the screen to start, and Donkey would come up and interact with the shopper, greet them with some sort of amusing greeting, and then you could pose with Donkey for a selfie. and download your picture and share it on social and enter a competition at the same time. So a really fun, engaging piece of experience to get people not only engaging with Donkey, but shopping as well at the same time. And did we complete the Queen? We did indeed. So one thing we've got here is just making sure we're mirroring, and this has been said a lot, I'm aware, but it doesn't mean it's any less important, mirroring your objectives compared to your results. So if you get to the end of your paper, just make sure that you're really lining those up. So again, it just makes it easy and you get that sort of tick straight away. So the 2 points here around penetration and trade up. So we had some fab stats here about sales uplift difference, which is 64%. And the share of the mouthwash category actually increased as well compared to control stores, which was absolutely amazing. And overall, that 77% incremental penetration was really the cherry on top of the cake. We've also just mentioned here as well competition results. So that was looped into the overall experience. And there's some just granular detail there that the judges might want to see as an added extra. And then adding a bit of colour into it. So this was an experience at the end of the day. So we got some quotes directly from shoppers to see what they thought, because part of this was getting that Donkey personality across to drive the association. So we had some lovely quotes, brightening up people's boring shops, and actually, people being brand advocates for Listerine already, which is great to see. So the final swish for this, I've already mentioned some of this, but we definitely don't want any wonky results. So just check again that all your results are laddering back to your original objectives and make sure they're as commercial as possible. We've talked a lot already about that. You know, have you actually changed behavior? Do you have an effectiveness measure that's not just the soft stats? Judges do really care about those hard measures of effectiveness. And Star Awards is all about work that works at the end of the day. So that's really important. And then a couple of really sort of basic ones, but by no means less important. Write your exec summary last. It's one of the hardest things to do right from the off. Spell check. I don't really need to say that, but it's amazing how many errors you do catch as you go through. And leave enough time for that approval process. That does take longer than you think. I think it took us about 2 weeks to get everybody who needed sight of the paper to sign that off. So make sure you build that into your timescales. And then just a little one, remember your media. It's amazing how many times the team get to the end of the process, they're ready to upload, and then they remember, oh my goodness, I need a JPEG, a designed JPEG to go along with this. So make sure you catch that early and just make sure you've got everything all together in your bundle ready to upload. And then just a final word is it's really an honor to be nominated and to actually win. It's, as Kirstine said at the start, recognizing and celebrating that talent and the brand and the industry. And the party is amazing. Lux put on a great awards night. So I can't recommend the experience enough. And good luck. Good luck with your writing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Love the Donkey. And I love actually just another obviously first class paper, and the theme that you've brought to life through that paper I think is a great example of taking something that could be perceived as maybe not so interesting actually, and just making it kind of really entertaining, as well as it being authentic. And I love that point you made about making sure that the story you're telling is authentic, avoiding the vagaries, which I guess to some extent comes back to the language point, in terms of, you know, using that straightforward language, not trying to you know, kind of mask information that you're maybe not sure about or isn't quite a fact, you know, with kind of marketing jargon. And I think the point you were making about yourself being the conductor or the orchestrator of the whole thing, you know, yes, you're writing the paper, yes, it's your responsibility, but you're representing the broader team, right? So I absolutely love that point there as well. We have got a chance now for some Q&As. We've got some time. So if anybody does have any questions that they would like to pop into the chat, please do so. I've got a couple of questions for the panel. They're not too taxing. Are all the panel still here? Toby, are you still online as well? Have we lost Toby? Maybe I lost Toby. Maybe. Okay, so I have got a couple of questions. And I guess one of them relates to the point that Hugh was touching on in his tips about the just entering the judging process and entering something that you feel you can build a good story around. It might not be the biggest campaign in the world, but actually if it's something you feel really, really proud of, then go for it. How do you guys decide, Laura and Claire, how do you decide what to enter?
I can take that one first if you think, Claire. It's a really tough one, and it's something that we sit around a table for many hours discussing. I'm sure a lot of agencies and brands do that as well. I think there are two main things for this. One is if the results are actually hard stats and are really successful, and not just sort of the woolly nature of things, which we've talked about before. And also if the story is really clear. If you can talk about it and give a sort of a summary in 2 sentences and it feels compelling, then it's immediately, yes, okay, this feels like a winner. So those are 2 things we definitely consider.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and then just add, like, there's definitely a gut feel to it. I think, you want to say there's all this criteria to tick and things like that, but with some campaigns, you just know that, like, the team have loved working on it, like, you've been excited about the results, and it's that feeling, like, before you've even seen the results, when you sometimes just know, like, you just know the campaign's going to perform really well, and having them is important. But I do think sometimes, and I think if it's not the one that you're like, so I want to submit that because, like, why wouldn't we? And then you're going, well, we could do this one and we could maybe put it in here and we could maybe do that. And yeah, I suppose it was all right. Like, that's the one that's not going to win you gold because you're not confident in it straight off the back. And some of them can have great results. Like, they can be campaigns with amazing results, but, like, I think as Toby kind of touched on earlier, the digital out of home was really exciting and what he did. And sometimes you've just run, like, a really efficient TV campaign, but that doesn't make it award winning either. So it is a balance. Like, not every great result means that you've got an award paper.
Yeah, good points. Hugh, would you add anything to that?
Well, only that I was really impressed by the 3 case histories and speakers. They're all, I would say, very sophisticated award entry people. I mean, they've clearly done it for a while, and they've really looked around and they've really done their study. So I hope that's not too off-putting for a new entrants, but a lot of extremely wise advice. I particularly like what Claire said about starting at the end, because to be quite honest, I mean, the thing I really mind about most is seeing some decent results and not just sort of faff. And so in a perfect world, you would start by looking, well, what have we done that we can really show has worked, and then work back from there is terrific. But as I say, there's plenty of room for the first time entries too, and there is a special category there for them.
Absolutely.
As a judge in the past, I've actually read the results before I read any of the paper.
Yeah, well,
and I know I'm not the only one that's done that, so I think that's why it's the best place to start writing.
Yeah, they're important. Yeah. Another question that I have is your point's really well made, Hugh. These are great papers, and Claire and Laura, it sounds like you are veterans of the Star Awards process and competition. What are you individually focused on as an improvement area in your 2024 Star Awards papers? What are the things that you're like, oh, I didn't quite do that last time, need to really think about doing that a little bit? Is there anything that you're like, yeah, I need to improve on that next time round?
I'm happy to go first. I think so. What Laura mentioned about like always having someone to kind of read and feedback and take it from a different perspective, that's super important to me. Like at least one person will read my paper, if not two. And that's where the whole like write it, start again comes from for me. But actually, I like my main thing would be like there's some things that as soon as they said to you, they're really obvious, and like I'm still learning my craft with it all. So actually next year I'm hoping that some of the thing like the feedback that I get being like, oh, of course I should have seen that. Like, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I big that bit up? Or why did I have that structure? It doesn't work. So I guess it's to be able to, you'll always get feedback on like crafting these things and developing them further, but become more proficient at it, because even after writing gold, I know it's going to be hard to do this, like write these papers again next year. It's not suddenly easy.
No, for sure. And there's a technique, I think, as well to it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Laura, any
Any
words?
Sorry, I've just gone dark. We're so energy efficient that the time has gone off on the lights. Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I think for us, it's one that comes up every year, but timings as well. You just don't think it's going to take that long, and then it does. And there's so many stakeholders involved. So I'm a big champion for trying to just start them earlier and earlier every single year, so that we can breathe a bit and it's not such a rush at the end, or having to incur those extra fees, which we've definitely done before. So yeah, that would be what we're looking to improve on.
Yes, sage advice.
Well, you didn't absolutely ask me, but I would just say, looking at the thing overall, what I do feel is that I mentioned earlier that I think the Star Wars has gone from strength to strength, and it's great to see how well it's supported. But it is so important that it isn't just like a great win on the night. I mean, because actually there's a huge body of knowledge there, which is really valuable to the whole, Scottish marketing community. And what I'd also encourage entrants here in the Star Awards to also to think, well, what about the London or sort of, national awards as well? Because particularly in some categories, obviously, Scotland has particular strength in, things like whiskey brands, but it has huge strength in public sector cases, which are superb. And I know they're not always entered down in London. And I think sometimes they could be, and they could also do very well down there. So I suppose what I'm saying is that it's there's a sort of bigger picture of this too, which is are we sharing enough of the information about the excellence of Scottish marketing around, both within Scotland and then perhaps elsewhere.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the great benefits about investing the time and writing a great paper, is that you can continue to reap the rewards from that in other avenues, in other ways, right? So we would absolutely encourage that. It's a really good point. Really good point. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, I don't think. Has anybody got any final points they would like to make, or pleas to people who are thinking about entering, who are on the call this afternoon?
I think one thing I wanted to say, and Hugh, you just twigged something in my brain, is another thing we're trying to do is pass on knowledge to the younger members of the industry, in agencies and brands. And that's why events like this are so important, but also the idea that anybody can write a good paper. You don't have to have all these years of experience and illustrious awards behind you. You can write a fantastic paper when you're fresh in the door. If you're passionate about it and keen to get all those jigsaw puzzle pieces in the right order, then I think that's something we should really champion as well.
Yeah. And I think you all made the point in different ways that it's also a team effort. I mean, those originally worked on the campaign, getting getting either the agency involved or the client involved. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of management here, and indeed, you probably to win this year, you should have started some time ago. but it's never, we still want you to enter now, but it does all take time.
It does. It's never too late, though. It's never too late.
Yeah, never too late.
Never too late. And the that's a lovely segue for me to wrap the session up. I think if there are no other questions or points, the The awards entry deadline, for those of you that didn't catch it earlier, is the 12th of February, so you have got some time. It's not too late. Go for it. There are, as you've seen today and has been referenced today, a whole host of case studies on the site that can be accessed very, very easily for inspiration. So please do have a look at those as you are thinking about your paper and preparing your paper. I guess all it saves for me to do today is to thank you all very much for coming, and also to thank our fantastic guests. Laura, Claire and Hugh, thank you for sharing your time and for giving your expertise. That is really, really appreciated. Also just to say thank you to the main strategic sponsors for the Star Awards. So that's ALT, Essence Media, Com, and Beam Suntory, ourselves. And there is going to be a feedback survey coming out tomorrow, as well as a little pop-up poll at the end of this event. So please do take a couple of minutes to complete those. That's really appreciated. Any questions or issues that you have whilst you're going through the process of considering a Star Awards entry or entering itself, technical issues, whatever it is, please don't hesitate to contact the Lux team, who are absolutely amazing and just do all of this so effortlessly. And all of the links that we've mentioned on the session today will be issued in an email tomorrow. So it just saves for me once again to say thank you all very, very much for your time, and have a wonderful afternoon. Just check there's nothing else. Oh, sorry, one question. When will judges be notified? There we go. Thank you, Kelly. In February, after the closing date. There we go. Perfect. Right. Thank you all very much indeed for your time. Much appreciated. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone, and look forward to seeing lots of great entries in February. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.